Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Alexander Carrington stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, gazing out at the city skyline. At 42, he was an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing steel-gray eyes that missed nothing. As the CEO of a global logistics empire, Alex had built his success on a relentless pursuit of control and perfection. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Carrington, your son is here to see you." "Send him in," Alex replied, his stern expression softening slightly. 10-year-old Max burst into the room, clutching Claire's iPhone in his small hands. "Dad, what's a prenup?" he asked. Alex froze, his blood running cold. "Where did you hear that word, Max?" "It was in Mom's email," Max said innocently, holding up the phone. Feigning calm, Alex took the device from his son. His heart stopped as his eyes landed on an email thread between Claire and her divorce lawyer. They were plotting, waiting for his father's inheritance. Something had clearly shifted. "Max, why don't you go play in my secretary's office for a while?" Alex said, his voice tight. "I need to talk to your mother." As Max left, Alex strode purposefully to the elevator, his mind racing. He found Claire in their sprawling penthouse, lounging on a chaise with a fashion magazine in hand. "Care to explain this?" he demanded, tossing the phone onto the coffee table. Claire's face paled as her eyes flicked to the screen. She snatched up the phone, her gaze darting between the email and Alex. "How dare you go through my private emails?" she snapped. "Our son found it," Alex replied, his tone icy. "Now explain." Claire's shoulders sagged for a moment before she straightened, a cold smile curling her lips. "I was waiting for your father's inheritance," she said with chilling nonchalance. "But plans change." Alex felt like he'd been punched in the gut, but he wasn't finished yet. With a calm, almost chilling smile, he pulled out his phone and showed Claire a series of incriminating photos, her locked in an intimate embrace with Mark, one of his top employees and an old friend. "You won't get a dime," Alex said softly. "You cheated. Remember the prenup?" Claire's initial shock gave way to disbelief. "How did you?" Alex cut her off, his voice turning to ice. "You're done. Pack your things tonight." Panic began to seep into Claire as the weight of her mistake became clear, but it was too late. Alex turned on his heel and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences. Across town, Mark Stevens sat alone in a dimly lit bar, nursing his third whiskey of the night. His phone buzzed relentlessly, Claire's name flashing on the screen alongside increasingly frantic messages. Their plan had unraveled spectacularly. In a nearby luxury hotel suite, Claire paced back and forth, her pristine designer luggage a stark contrast to her frazzled appearance. She had underestimated Alex, but she wasn't about to admit defeat just yet. The next morning, Alex stormed into the offices of Kingan Logistics, his thunderous expression scattering employees like leaves in a gale. Once in his office, he wasted no time. Get Mark Stevens' access revoked, completely. Now, he barked at his head of security, leaving no room for argument. But Mark had anticipated this. Before his access was severed, he managed to leak sensitive business information to several of Kingan Logistics' biggest competitors. Meanwhile, Claire began plotting her own revenge. Leveraging her sharp social skills and extensive network, she spread malicious rumors about Alex and his supposedly crumbling empire, tarnishing his once spotless reputation. As Alex reviewed damage reports in his office, his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Carrington, there's a Victor Zorin on the line for you." Alex's eyes narrowed. Victor Zorin, a ruthless Russian oligarch who had been circling Kingan Logistics for years. Picking up the phone, Alex's voice was cool and controlled. "Zorin, what can I do for you?" "Ah, Alexander." Zorin's heavily accented voice oozed false sympathy. "I heard about your recent troubles. Perhaps now is a good time to discuss the merger we've been dancing around?" Alex's grip tightened on the phone. "Kingan Logistics is not for sale, Zorin. Not now, not ever." As he hung up, Alex realized this was no longer just about personal betrayal. His entire empire was under siege, and the battle had only just begun. Alex sat across from Liam Quinn, a brilliant but enigmatic investigator he'd hired to dig into Claire, Mark, and Zorin. The findings were worse than Alex had imagined. "They've been stealing from the company for months," Liam said, sliding a file across the desk. "Their plan is to bankrupt you, destroy your empire, and flee the country with the profits." Alex's jaw tightened as he flipped through the damning evidence. Before he could fully process the betrayal, his phone buzzed. It was his CFO. "Sir, we have a problem. Zorin just launched a series of strategic moves that are crippling our supply chain." Hanging up, Alex knew time wasn't on his side. He arranged an emergency meeting with Zorin at an exclusive private club. The Russian oligarch sat across from him, exuding smug overconfidence. Your company is on its knees, Alexander. I'm offering to buy you out at a fraction of its value. It's a generous offer, considering your circumstances. Alex leaned forward, his gaze steely. You underestimate me, Zorin. This isn't over. As he walked out, his mind was already working through a plan. Not just to survive, but to annihilate his enemies. Back at his office, Alex initiated his counterattack. Using the evidence Liam had provided, he filed a lawsuit against Claire and Mark, accusing them of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Within hours, he began dismantling Mark's influence within Kingdon Logistics, firing his allies, freezing his accounts, and cutting off every avenue of power. It was precise and devastating, a calculated strike. As night fell, Alex stood at his office window, looking out over the city and the empire he'd built. The war was just beginning, but Alexander Carrington was a man who played to win, and he would, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Claire Carrington paced her rented apartment, the designer luggage surrounding her a glaring mismatch to the modest space. Scrolling through her contacts, she searched for someone who could help her turn the tables. Her finger hovered over a name. Andrea Wells, a relentless investigative journalist. A cold smile spread across Claire's lips as she hit the call button. Andrea, it's Claire Carrington. I have a story for you. How would you like an exclusive on the dark side of Alexander Carrington's empire? Across town, Alex sat reviewing the latest reports on the chaos Claire and Mark had caused when his intercom buzzed. Mr. Carrington, there's a Ms. Wells from the Tribune on the line. She's asking for a comment on some allegations. Alex's eyes narrowed. The battle had escalated. Picking up the phone, his voice was calm and measured. Ms. Wells, what can I do for you? Andrea launched into a litany of accusations. Corruption, abusive leadership, shady dealings. Alex listened silently, his mind already calculating his next move. When she finished, he replied with only 2 words. No comment. Hanging up, he immediately dialed Liam Quinn. I need everything you have on Claire and Mark, now. Days passed, and the city buzzed with rumors. Headlines screamed of Alex's alleged misdeeds, each accusation more damning than the last. Claire watched from the sidelines, a smug smile on her face as she fed Andrea a steady stream of half-truths and fabrications. Mark, still reeling from his humiliating exit from Carrington Logistics, supplied insider details that added credibility to their claims. But Claire wasn't content with just tarnishing Alex's reputation. She wanted to hurt him where it truly mattered. I want full custody of Max, she told her lawyer, her voice sharp with determination. Paint Alex as an unfit father. Use whatever means necessary. Caught in the crossfire, Max retreated into himself. At school, he overheard whispers about his father and noticed the pitying looks from teachers. At home, he felt the tension. Alex's barely contained fury radiating like a storm ready to break. Max didn't fully understand what was happening. He only knew his world was unraveling. Alex, for his part, had anticipated Claire's move. When her lawyer filed for emergency custody, Alex's team was ready to counter. They leaked their own story to the press, a sordid account of Claire's affair, her theft from the company, and her manipulation of Max for her own benefit. Public sympathy, fickle as ever, began to shift. Claire found herself on the receiving end of scathing editorials and relentless social media attacks. Her carefully crafted image as the wronged wife crumbled. In court, Alex's lawyers were unyielding. They presented damning evidence of Claire's infidelity, her attempts to circumvent the prenup, and her plans to flee the country with stolen company funds. The judge, a stern woman with steely eyes, listened impassively. When the gavel fell, Claire's world shattered. Custody is awarded to the father, Alexander Carrington. The mother, Claire Carrington, is granted supervised visitation pending further review. Claire stumbled out of the courtroom, her designer heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Outside, a swarm of reporters waited, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. She pushed past them, her face a mask of despair and rage. Moments later, Alex emerged, holding Max's small hand tightly. He faced the cameras, his expression grim but composed. Justice has been served, he said simply. My son and I ask for privacy during this difficult time. As they drove away, Max looked up. Dad, is it over now? Alex's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Not yet, son, he said softly, but it will be soon. Meanwhile, Mark Stevens sat in a dingy motel room, surrounded by empty whiskey bottles and crumpled papers. His laptop glowed in the dim light, displaying financial reports and internal memos from Carrington Logistics. For days, he'd been searching for a weakness, any chink in Alex's armor. His phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. He answered, his voice weary. Stevens. Mr. Stevens, a voice replied, heavily accented and unmistakably Russian. I believe we share a mutual interest in Alexander Carrington's downfall. Mark sat up, his mind racing. Who is this? A friend. One who can provide the resources you need to finish what you started. It was Zorov. Mark's pulse quickened. This was it, his last chance to strike back at Alex. I'm listening, he said. Across the city, in his penthouse office, the next move was already being planned. Alex was in the middle of a video conference when alarms erupted from his computer. Red warning messages flashed across multiple screens. Sir. His head of IT's panicked voice crackled through the speakers. We're under attack. Massive data breaches. Our logistics software is compromised, and shipments are being rerouted. Alex's expression darkened. He had anticipated this move, but the sheer scale of the attack exceeded his expectations. Initiate Protocol Omega, he ordered, his tone cold and resolute. As chaos consumed Carrington Logistics, Alex remained eerily calm. Shipments were delayed, contracts breached, and the company's stock price plummeted. His phone rang incessantly, board members, partners, and media outlets all demanding answers. In a hidden command center deep beneath Carrington Tower, Alex monitored the escalating situation. Liam Quinn stood beside him, providing real-time updates. It's Mark, Liam confirmed grimly. He's working with a team of elite hackers. But there's more. He's got Zorov backing him. Serious backing. Alex nodded, unsurprised. And our countermeasures? Liam's lips curled into a predatory smile, though his eyes remained cold. In place and ready. Just say the word. Alex's finger hovered over a button on the console. Memories of betrayal flashed in his mind. Claire, Mark, and others who had turned against him. He thought of Max, caught in the middle of this war. His jaw tightened. Execute, he commanded. Across the city, in his motel room, Mark Stevens was celebrating. His laptop displayed the havoc unfolding at Carrington Logistics. Zorov's voice crackled through the speaker, satisfaction dripping from every word. Excellent work, Mr. Stevens, Zorov purred. Carrington is finished. I'll have my team draft the acquisition papers immediately. Mark poured himself another drink, grinning. Here's to the fall of Alexander Carrington, he toasted. As he raised the glass to his lips, his laptop screen abruptly went black. Then, line by line, ominous text began to appear. Did you really think it would be that easy, Mark? Mark's blood ran cold. He recognized the writing style. No, he whispered, his voice trembling. No, no, no. His phone died. The lights in the motel room flickered and went out. In the suffocating darkness, heavy footsteps echoed outside his door. In his opulent Moscow office, Zorov frowned as his connection with Mark was suddenly severed. Barking orders at his subordinates, he demanded answers. But as reports poured in, frozen assets, raids on his properties, and arrest warrants issued in multiple countries, he realized with mounting dread that he had underestimated Alexander Carrington for the final time. Back in New York, Alex watched passively as FBI agents escorted Mark out of the motel in handcuffs. On another screen, Zorov was being led from his Moscow office by Russian authorities. Liam let out a low whistle. Remind me never to get on your bad side, boss. Alex didn't respond. His gaze remained fixed on the monitors, on the empire he had salvaged and the enemies he had dismantled. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt nothing but emptiness. His phone buzzed with a text from Max. Dad, when are you coming home? Alex closed his eyes, the weight of it all pressing down on him. It's over, he murmured. Let's go home. Claire Carrington stood in the lobby of Carrington Tower, her designer outfit in stark contrast to her disheveled appearance. She clutched her handbag tightly, as if it were a lifeline. I need to see Alex. Mr. Carrington, she said hoarsely to the receptionist. Please. It's urgent. The receptionist's eyes widened in recognition, but she maintained her professional demeanor. One moment, please. Upstairs, Alex was reviewing the final reports on Zorov's takedown when his intercom buzzed. Mr. Carrington, your ex-wife is here to see you. Alex's jaw tightened. He considered turning her away, but curiosity won out. Send her up. When Claire entered his office, Alex was standing by the window, his back to her. She hesitated, then took a cautious step forward. Alex, save it, he interrupted, turning to face her. His eyes were cold, devoid of warmth or recognition. What do you want, Claire? She flinched at his tone but pressed on. I've made a terrible mistake. I see that now. I'll leave, Mark. I'll do anything. Please, just give me another chance. Alex laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that made Claire recoil. Another chance? You tried to destroy me, Claire. You used our son as a pawn in your games. And now, what? You think batting your eyelashes will make it all go away? He moved to his desk and pressed a button. A holographic display flared to life, projecting social media feeds, news articles, and financial reports. You're finished, Claire. Your name is mud in every circle that matters. No one will hire you, partner with you, or even be seen with you in public. Claire's face crumpled as the weight of her downfall sank in. What have you done? She whispered. I ruined you. Alex replied coldly, just like you tried to ruin me. The difference is, I succeeded. Tears streamed down Claire's face as she collapsed into a chair. What about Max? He needs his mother. Alex's expression hardened further. You lost the right to call yourself his mother when you used him to hurt me. He's better off without you. As if on cue, Alex's phone buzzed with a message from Mark's lawyer. Client willing to make a deal. Full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. Alex held the message up for Claire to see, watching as the last trace of fight left her eyes. It's over, Claire, he said firmly. Mark is going to prison, and he's taking what's left of your reputation with him. Claire stood on unsteady legs, her world in ruins. As she reached the door, Alex's voice cut through the silence one final time. Oh, and Claire, he said, his tone icy, I bought out the Tribune. Andrea Wells won't be writing any more stories about me, or you. The door clicked shut behind her with a sound that felt like a final nail in the coffin. Alex turned back to the window, gazing out at the city he now unquestionably ruled. He had won, utterly and completely. Yet, instead of triumph, he felt a hollow ache in his chest. His phone buzzed again. Max, Dad, can we have pizza tonight? A faint smile broke through Alex's stern facade. Perhaps he wasn't entirely hollow after all. In a maximum security prison upstate, Mark Stevens sat on the edge of his cot, staring at the blank wall. His lawyer had just left, confirming that his plea deal had been accepted. A decade behind bars, far better than the life sentence Zorov now faced. As night fell over New York, 3 lives lay in shambles. Claire, once the toast of high society, now a disgraced pariah wandering the streets with nowhere to go. Mark, locked away, his ambitions reduced to ashes. Zorov, his sprawling criminal empire dismantled, awaiting justice in a Russian courtroom. At the pinnacle of it all stood Alexander Carrington, the man who had orchestrated their downfalls. He had won. Completely. In his Moscow penthouse, Zorov stood by the window, a glass of vodka in hand. He stared at the city lights, his reflection in the glass revealing a man consumed by fury and obsession. Alexander Carrington had humiliated him, dismantled his operations, and left him a shadow of his former self. But Zorov was far from finished. His phone buzzed, displaying a text from an unknown number. It's done. The syndicate is ready. A cold smile crept across Zorov's face. For months, he had been rebuilding his network, calling in favors from the darkest corners of the underworld. Now, backed by an influential Eastern European crime syndicate, he was ready to strike back. Across the ocean, Alex Carrington sat in his office, reviewing quarterly reports. The past few months had been quiet, too quiet. A nagging sense of foreboding lingered, a feeling that something was brewing. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Carrington, we have a situation. Alex's eyes narrowed. What kind of situation? Sir, we're under attack. Massive cyber attacks across all systems. Our firewalls are failing. Alex's jaw tightened. He'd been anticipating retaliation. Initiate Protocol Omega. Now, but as the hours passed, it became clear this was no ordinary assault. Zorov had learned from his mistakes. This time, the attacks were coordinated and relentless, targeting not just Carrington Logistics but Alex's entire empire. Banks reported suspicious activity in Alex's accounts. Sensitive information was leaked to the media, sending stock prices into freefall. Investors panicked, pulling their funds en masse. In the war room, Alex stood amidst a sea of screens, each displaying the chaos engulfing his businesses. Liam Quinn burst through the door, his face grim. Boss, it's worse than we thought. Zorov's got a team of corrupt lawyers filing international lawsuits against us. Environmental damage, labor violations, you name it. They're trying to bleed us dry. Alex's fists clenched. The battle was far from over. Alex's mind raced, calculating moves and countermoves. Before he could respond, another alert blared. Sir, His head of security's voice crackled over the intercom. "We've detected an unauthorized entry at your private residence." The line went dead. For the first time in years, Alex felt a cold fear grip his heart. "Get me to the house. Now." The drive to his mansion was a blur. As they approached, signs of a struggle came into view. Broken glass, overturned furniture. Alex charged inside, shouting, "Max? Dad!" Max's voice called out from upstairs. Alex took the stairs 3 at a time, bursting into his son's room. Max was huddled in a corner, shaken but unharmed. Near the window, an unconscious man dressed in black lay sprawled on the floor. "Are you okay?" Alex asked, pulling Max into a tight embrace. Max nodded, his voice muffled against his father's chest. "I remembered what you taught me about being prepared." Alex's throat tightened with a mixture of pride and guilt. He had taught his son to be strong, to survive, but at what cost? As security swarmed the house, Alex's phone rang. The caller ID read unknown. "Mr. Carrington," Zoran's voice came through, smooth as silk. "I trust you have my attention now." Alex's voice was ice cold. "You've made a grave mistake, Zoran." "Oh, I don't think so," Zoran replied, a hint of malice in his tone. "This is just the beginning. I'm going to take everything from you. Your money, your power, your legacy. And when you're left with nothing, broken and begging for mercy, that's when I'll end you." The line went dead. Alex glanced at Max, still clinging to him, then at the chaos around them. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Had he underestimated Zoran? Had his arrogance endangered everything he held dear? But the doubt vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by an icy, unyielding resolve. "Zoran wants a war?" Alex muttered. "We'll give him one." He turned to Liam, who stood ready for orders. "Call the team. It's time to end this." The safe house was an unassuming brownstone in a quiet neighborhood. Its basement, however, was a high-tech command center. Alex sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by his most trusted advisors and operatives. Liam Quinn, looking like he hadn't slept in days, stood at his right hand. "All right," Alex began, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "Zoran thinks he has us cornered. It's time to show him how wrong he is. Liam, what have you got?" Liam tapped on a tablet, and holographic displays illuminated the room. "We've identified the key players in Zoran's syndicate, his financiers, enforcers, and political connections. They're spread across Eastern Europe and Asia, but they all report to this man." A photo appeared on the screen. A severe-looking man with cold, calculating eyes. "Dmitry Volov," Liam continued. "Zoran's right-hand man and the mastermind behind the cyber attacks against us." Alex studied the face, committing it to memory. "And our plan?" Alex asked. "We hit them where it hurts," Liam said, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "We've got teams ready to move on their money laundering operations in Cyprus, their weapon caches in Ukraine, and their drug routes through Turkey. When we're done, Zoran's entire network will be in chaos." Alex nodded, then turned to his head of legal affairs. "And the lawsuits?" The lawyer gave a thin smile. "Countersuits are ready to file in every jurisdiction. More importantly, we've uncovered evidence of judicial bribery. Once this goes public, half the judges on Zoran's payroll will be facing charges of their own." One by one, Alex's team laid out their strategies: financial maneuvers to freeze Zoran's assets, media campaigns to sway public opinion, and backdoor diplomacy to secure international cooperation in dismantling the syndicate. As the meeting wound down, Alex stood. "You all know what's at stake. Zoran thinks he can destroy everything we've built. We're going to show him the true meaning of destruction. Execute the plan. No mercy, no quarter." The team dispersed, each member heading out to set Alex's counterattack into motion. But as the others left, Liam stayed behind. "Boss, there's one more thing," he said quietly. "I think I've found a way to lure Zoran out into the open. But it's risky." Alex raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Liam laid out his plan. A false lead about a multi-billion-dollar deal in Dubai, too enticing for Zoran to resist. But the plan would require Alex to put himself directly in harm's way. "It's dangerous," Liam admitted, "but if it works, we can end this once and for all." Alex stood in thoughtful silence, weighing the risks. Finally, he nodded. "Do it. But make sure Max is secure. I won't let Zoran use him against me again." As Liam left to set the trap, Alex remained alone in the command center. He thought of Claire, of Mark, and of all the adversaries he'd crushed to reach this point. Zoran was just another in a long line of enemies who had underestimated him. And he would be the last. Thousands of miles away, in a luxurious Moscow apartment, Zoran received an encrypted message. His eyes widened as he read the details of Carrington's supposed deal in Dubai. "Prepare the jet," he barked at his assistant. "We're going to the Middle East." The pieces were in place. The final battle was about to begin. Days later, Alex stood in the opulent lobby of Dubai's most exclusive hotel, surrounded by the world's business elite. The trap was set. Now, all he had to do was wait for Zoran to take the bait. He didn't have to wait long. A commotion at the entrance drew his attention. Victor Zoran strode in, flanked by bodyguards, his eyes scanning the room until they locked onto Alex. For a moment, the two men stared at each other across the crowded lobby. Then Zoran smiled, a cold, predatory grin, and began making his way toward Alex. But before he could reach him, chaos erupted. Police swarmed in from every entrance, shouting orders in Arabic and English. Zoran's face twisted in rage as realization dawned. "Carrington," he roared, lunging forward. But it was too late. Officers tackled him to the ground, snapping handcuffs around his wrists. Alex watched passively as Zoran was led away, still shouting threats and obscenities. It was over. The man who had endangered everything Alex held dear was finished. As the dust settled, Alex's phone buzzed. A text from Liam. "It's done. Volov and the others are in custody. The syndicate is finished." Alex allowed himself a small smile. He'd won again. But as he surveyed the chaos he had orchestrated, he felt no joy, no triumph, just a hollow emptiness. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Max. "Dad, are you okay? When are you coming home?" Alex closed his eyes, suddenly weary. It was time to go home, to face the consequences of the world he had built. Months passed. The world watched in awe as Victor Zoran's criminal empire crumbled, its tentacles severed one by one. Alexander Carrington emerged from the ashes stronger than ever. His company's stock soared to unprecedented heights, cementing his position at the pinnacle of power. In his newly renovated office, Alex stood by the window, looking out over the city he now unquestionably ruled. The skyline was dotted with buildings bearing the Carrington name, a testament to his expanding empire. A knock at the door interrupted his reverie. "Come in," he called, without turning around. Max entered, now a 16-year-old young man and the spitting image of his father. "The board is ready for your presentation on the Zoran acquisition," Max said. Alex nodded, allowing himself a small smile. He had seized control of Zoran's legitimate business assets, expanding his reach into markets he had only dreamed of before. The aftermath of his victory had been fertile ground for his strategic mind, turning near defeat into unparalleled success. As they walked to the boardroom, Alex glanced at his son. Max had seen the darker side of his rise to power, the ruthlessness it took to survive in their world. But he had also witnessed his father's intelligence, resilience, and unwavering determination. "Remember, Max," Alex said as they paused outside the boardroom. "In this world, you're either the predator or the prey. Always be prepared. Always stay 3 steps ahead." Max nodded, his eyes serious. "I know, Dad. You've taught me well." For a moment, Alex saw something flicker in his son's gaze, admiration tinged with caution. Max respected his father's strength and ability to overcome any obstacle, but he was wary of the cold ruthlessness that defined Alex's path to the top. The board meeting unfolded with precision. Alex laid out his plans for further expansion, his strategic brilliance captivating the room. The executives listened in a mix of awe and fear, knowing all too well the consequences of crossing Alexander Carrington. He had proven his dominance time and again, with Claire, with Mark, and now with Zoran. Mercy and forgiveness were luxuries he could no longer afford. Later that evening, Alex stood on the balcony of his penthouse, a glass of scotch in hand. The city sprawled before him, a glittering testament to his power. For the first time, he felt truly untouchable. His mind drifted back to the day Max had innocently asked about prenuptial agreements, a moment that had unknowingly set in motion the chain of events leading him here. What began as a simple conversation had culminated in a battle for survival, one he had won at great cost. The city sparkled below, but Alex's thoughts lingered in the shadows of his victories, where power and sacrifice walked hand in hand. He felt no regret for the choices he'd made or the lives he destroyed. In Alex's mind, they were merely obstacles, challenges to overcome, nothing more. The world was a battlefield, and Alexander Carrington had emerged as its undisputed victor. As the sun set over his empire, Alex allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of his reign. He was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Behind him, he heard the familiar sound of footsteps. Max joined him at the railing, his eyes scanning the glittering cityscape below. It's incredible, isn't it? Max said softly. Everything you've built. Alex nodded, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. And someday, it'll all be yours. Max was silent for a moment, then turned to face his father. Dad, do you ever wonder, was it worth it? The cost of getting here? Alex met his son's gaze, seeing in it a warmth and humanity he had long since abandoned. For a fleeting moment, doubt flickered in his mind, but he pushed it aside. In this world, Max, you take what you want, or watch someone else take it from you. I chose to take it. Remember that. Max nodded slowly, turning back to the view. Yet Alex could see the conflict in his son's expression, a struggle between admiration for his achievements and discomfort with the ruthless methods that had secured them. In that moment, Alex realized something profound. Though he had conquered the world, there was one thing he might never fully possess: his son's unwavering allegiance to his worldview. Max would forge his own path, shaped by but not beholden to his father's legacy. Strangely, Alex found he was at peace with that. Perhaps it was Max's role to be the one thing his empire had lacked: a moral compass. A reminder of the humanity Alex had sacrificed on his relentless climb to the top. As night fell over the city, father and son stood side by side, overlooking the empire they would shape together. The future stretched out before them, full of untold possibilities and challenges yet to come. Alexander Carrington had won his war. Now, it was time to secure a legacy that would endure for generations. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.